Okay, Palvi. We have our
All
second
right.
conversation about Adlerian psychology and Adlerian philosophy, which is basically philosophy and psychology that is inspired by the historical figure of Alfred Adler, who for about a decade belonged to the inner circle of the discussion group around Sigmund Freud. So he was exposed to early and earliest psychoanalysis in Vienna and then did his own thing, which is sometimes summarized as positive psychology or individual psychology. So last week we discussed some topics, and some topics are necessarily left to be discussed. And today we catch up on some of the things that you continue to have in mind and were discussed by the two authors that wrote the two books. Can you tell them again the titles?
Sure. It's called The Courage to be Disliked and then The Courage to be Happy. And they're both written by Kishimi-san and another one. I can never remember their names.
Yeah, so two Japanese authors. Yes, one of them who is more kind of a journalist and the other one who's a veritable Adlerian theorist and philosopher. Yeah.
Perfect. So, Doc, I wanted to, exactly like you mentioned, go deeper into the Adlerian psychology. And before we even go into, the topics, I actually wanted to talk about the reason why I even picked the book, which was the subtitle, right? Or the title, which is The Courage to be Disliked. And I wanted to discuss that. And the premise of the book, obviously comes down to that, which is for you to be happy, you have to be comfortable to be disliked or have the courage to be disliked. And logically, all of us know we shouldn't care about what people think of us or that, and that everyone is busy thinking about themselves and no one thinks about, about me. I am the only one who's thinking about me. Yet, when I do something, the opinion of others does matter. And the way I was thinking was, if I'm an actor, if other people say I'm a bad actor, then their opinion does matter. So, I cannot just be like, oh, I have the courage to be disliked and I'm going to just continue being whatever actor I am becoming. Or if someone tells you you're a bad shrink, right? Like it impacts not just your mental attitude, it also impacts it impacts the paycheck, it impacts, your authority in the world, and all of that. And what is your take on, should people just be comfortable being disliked or should people just be comfortable, that they do whatever they want to do and it's okay if nobody likes them or understands them, etc. And in theory, there are so many slogans around it as well, right? But
dance as if nobody's watching, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. Those I was trying to think. Yeah, those ones, right? But in reality, you can't operate, right? Or can you? Can you operate like that?
Right. Okay. This is already a complex starting point. This is why we dedicate some time to it. Let us first of all ask, who are we talking about? Disliked by whom? And obviously there are differences. Do I care if I get a message from Central Africa and somebody says, I saw your picture on your internet, I didn't care reading the text that you wrote, I just want to tell you that I dislike you for the color of your beard, whatever, right? So this would be a completely arbitrary and random dislike. Do I have to be courageous to not to care about this kind of dislike? Probably not. It doesn't affect me so much because it doesn't touch so much things that are important to me, nor does it expose that this person has access to other people who would have structural power over me. So it would be very different if the same person from a place that I'm no connections with, be it, Mongolia or Central Africa or Idaho, sent me a message, say, look, I don't care the color of your beard, and I have access to most of the people that you know, and I will try to influence their opinion on you so that they also dislike you. That is my mission now. Very different situation. Still, I don't care about the person as such, but they have revealed that they have an access to something that is powerful over me, right? So these are just kind of two situations that show that it really matters who I imagine when I say that I should have the courage to be disliked by someone. The statement implies, the statement of courage to be disliked means that there should be something at stake. So per definition, almost the random person is probably not meant. It is meant to address people who dislike me, who indeed have some structural power over me, be it in money, connections, career, or emotions. So for example, family members, right, who dislike me, siblings, parents, extended family, and so on. And here it's important again to differentiate. So basically we can differentiate between contexts from which I can divorce myself from, and existential context where I cannot. If we talk about just work, and I have the choice to, choose context, I have the choice to go to a different company, to be self-employed or whatever, then this is a, so to speak, a divorceable context. I can go away from the country, from those people, from this company, from this career mode. With family, it's a very different matter. I might physically divorce from them. I could create physical separation, but that does not mean that my mental state or my unconscious is as ready to let it go.
So actually, I think I would, I have examples for almost all three scenarios.
Yes. But let me ask you first, do you see that those contexts are different, or do
I see those contexts as different. But again, I think it's still very theoretical to me. And let's talk by the three topics that you said, right? Like one is society, some random person in the world. Another is my, the people at my work or my professional relationships.
Yeah.
And the third being the friends and family. And we'll lump those together.
Yes. And just as a short add note before I let you continue, I think that because those contexts are different, I need different kinds of courage. I think I need a different kind of courage to risk money and career than to risk existential relationships. I think they are on two different axes and two different dimensions.
So, okay. So actually, let me give you an example about the society one, and then you tell me whether that, like, I've had problems just with the society example itself. Like, obviously, problem in the professional and the friends, where I have a problem being disliked, like not having the courage to be disliked, right?
Yes.
So an example I'll give you is one of my friends, he was driving in US and the cars in front of him had an accident. So he also pulled to the side. The lady in one of the cars, she was pregnant, about like 6, 7, 8, like visibly pregnant. And she was really shaken, even though she was physically and mentally, she was fine. It was just the car that was damaged. So my friend pulls to the side, calls 911. And then the lady asked him that, hey, can you stay with me until the cops come or until the ambulance come? And he's like, no, because he had a pizza and he was going home, his pizza was getting cold. He's like, oh, you know what? Actually, no, you're fine. I'm going to go, because in his mind, the pizza was getting cold and he wanted to go home. Now, according to Adler, he is doing the right thing, because he really is, he did his job, which was to call 911, ensure the woman is perfectly fine. More than that, he had the courage to say, you know what, if I stay here, I'm going to continue thinking about my pizza, and my food is getting cold, and I'm hungry, and my kids are getting hungry. So I'm going to just go and leave. To me, when we all heard the story, my partner was like, well, this is exactly what Adler means, right? He had the courage to be disliked. He knew what his priority was. So he left, and it is okay. And this woman was just a random woman on the road. It's not like he was going to run into her again. But to me, I wouldn't have the courage to be disliked by even her. I would have stayed. And I obviously think that our friend did a wrong thing, right? Like, he should have stayed. Is this, and even though in my head I would be just getting upset because I have to, I'm getting hungry. I know my kids are getting hungry. I would have still stayed, because I didn't want to be the person, who walks away. And this is, again, a very extreme example, but we do have other examples in life, right? Where you do something for somebody, and in your head, your voice is saying, oh, this is so annoying that I have to do this. And you only do it because you don't want the other person to dislike you, right?
Yes. Okay, let's look at this example, because there are some interesting components there. First of all, I would separate the ethical from the psychological. So even though I ethically disagree with what he did, I will put that to the side, because I'm not interested in that, in this example. Let's look at it just psychologically. So where does it come from, this idea, if I try to kind of put myself into Adler's shoes, and kind of impose this, what is it called?
Psychology. Forceful
I forgot
thinking.
the term. This rule, basically, of the ability to be disliked to the situation. Where is it for Adler coming from? Adler's one of his main ideas was that most of us walk around with an idea of, or an attitude of insufficiency.
Yeah.
An insufficiency and an inferiority. Adler had a very specific idea that it is not really actual anymore. He basically said everyone has some physical, organic, factual insufficiency when they come to the world when they're born. So some have a weak liver, a weak heart, a skin rash or something, and that basically manifests mentally as a sense of insufficiency or inferiority in comparison to other people who don't have that. That this is how it is perceived by children. Let's forget about that. The physiological aspect, and let's leave the aspect that Alfred Adler said, that basically we all have some sort of inferiority complex, right? So the question is now, how do we deal with that? And here it becomes kind of more structured when we look at the example you gave, because there is a sane way to deal with that, and there is the more normal neurotic way to deal with that. The more normal neurotic way is to try to overcompensate, which Adler basically observed on particularly men who are too short in comparison to society standard, and then try to overcompensate and try to be extra bully, extra strong, extra confident in order to make up for what otherwise crushed them with a sense of just being inferior in comparison to other men. So Napoleon and Mussolini, and take whatever small guys you want to have in world history, would be kind of classic cases of overcompensating for something physiological, in this case, again, for the shortness, right? So this would be a normal neurotic / bad way to deal with that, or an immature way to deal with that. A more mature way to deal with it is to forget that I have a certain perceived disadvantage, right? Be it the inferiority that I come from a poor family or an uneducated family, or that my nose is too big, or that I'm too small, or whatever it is, right? All this, at some point, yes, I grew up with it. That is the normal thing, according to Adler. And at some point, I become so mature and gain such an understanding into life in general that I understand I cannot care about this anymore. I stop caring about it. I perceive myself as a human being that I am, and I make the best of it. And I don't care about the old perceived insufficiency or inferiority. So this would be one aspect of I don't let the past matter anymore, something that we discussed last time more, right? So this would be one aspect that is according to Adler where it makes sense from an Adlerian perspective to say the past doesn't matter. I don't want to be ruled by my past perceived insufficiency. I grew out of it. I am different than others, and I don't care. I live my life, I make the best out of it. So I don't overcompensate, and hence what I do, the way I speak, the way I act to others appears adequate and doesn't appear somehow neurotic in the sense that, you know, I would be a short guy and I would have a kind of demonstrative way to try to outbully taller guys because I hate this idea of being inferior. So the question is now in the example that he gave, was the person with a pizza overcompensating for something that he grew up with an idea of a certain insufficiency, or is it a statement of independence? This is something that we can only speculate about. This is something that we can only look from the outside. So ultimately, you would need a deeper discussion with the person involved. From what you tell, because it's such an absurd example that he left a person who was visibly shaken and has a medical reason to be more sensitive than others because of her pregnancy, and to favor the hot pizza, right? So this is the absurd part of this element there, which is kind of very inadequate, not just from an ethical perspective, but seems to be inadequate in a more fundamental way of caring about people in general, which speaks for me for some sort of not obvious overcompensation for some neurotic thing, right? I wouldn't, it doesn't scream like overcompensating for inferiority and insufficiency.
Clearly not.
So this is not kind of simply Adlerian, to be understood in an Adlerian way, but it seems inadequate nonetheless. And this is why, for me, this would not be a kind of an example for an admirable application of the Adlerian dictum, the Adlerian rule of be courageous enough not to be liked by others. How do you see that?
Exactly, right? Like, to me, that, you know, that friend of ours, I didn't think he, you know, besides, even if you leave ethics to a side, I did not, I agree with you, but my partner's point of view was he did his job, and his job was pull over, call the cops. Number two, check the woman if she's okay. And according to Adler, this whole, you know, just that is what his duty was, and he fulfilled his duty. Anything more than
I'm not
that,
sure. I'm not
if
sure
he
if this
didn't
is what
feel
Adler
like
would
doing,
argue.
yeah,
Because Adler would come from a psychological perspective of basically caring, is that an
about,
overcompensation or not?
yeah,
And it's not clear to me from the example that it is, you know, that this is regardless of an overcompensation. I can still imagine that there would be an overcompensation here of some sort that is not very obvious.
Right. And again, let's take, maybe I did give a very extreme example, but let's take another example, right? I have a friend who wants me to do a certain errand for her because, you know, she is upstate New York, and I'm right by New York City. She wants me to go pick up another friend of hers from the airport, and then because I'm already driving over to meet her, I should pick her up and then go. Except for me, that means that I have to sit in the traffic for an additional 2 hours. Now, neither can I. And again, here I'm moving a little bit more from the society to the friends and family point of view, but neither do I care about this new person who's coming. I don't know them at all. But because of them now because of my friend, I'm now suffering through 2 to 3 hours extra of traffic, which will get me tired, exhausted, and a lot of time is now, like I'm literally, my commute went from 2 hours to 3 or 4 hours now. And neither do I have the courage to say no to my friend that, no, I'm not going to pick them up, because very rarely do they ask me a favor like that. Nor do I have the,
so is it incorrect to speak of courage, that you don't have the courage?
Again, exactly, right? Like you don't have the courage
framework there. Is it really a lack of courage?
It is a lack of courage, right? Because I cannot say to my friend that, dude, it's going to increase my commute by 3 more hours, and it's going to be extremely tiring for me. And it's a time suck, it is exhausting, and all of that, because I feel the sense of obligation that she's my friend. She has never asked me before. And then again, she's not going to like me because the first time that she's ever asked me something, I'm saying no, even though, like generally she's the one who's always nicer, will go out of her way and towards me. So now I don't have the courage to be disliked.
Okay,
right?
Let's look at these consequences. I think this is quite interesting. So there are two possibilities, two groups of possibilities of consequences. One, which is your estimate that she would not like it, right? The other one, it's possible that you misunderstand her and she wouldn't make such a big deal out of it. That you would say, okay, I can call someone else, you're right, someone who lives close by, I don't know, like this.
Yeah, no way, I know she would mind. I know her well enough, right?
Good, okay, so let's take this example. So there's something actually at stake, and what is at stake is sympathy and kind of interpersonal bond. So it might, to counteract kind of to her wish, might lead to a diminishment of the friendship. Right? This is basically what is at stake. What would it take for someone to not take that into consideration, to see it as you did, that it might lead to that, and to say, I still prioritize my saving of time? Under which circumstances would someone or you do that? Because basically then you're saying, my time is more important to me than this friendship. I accept
it is not just the time, right? It's my time, my energy.
All of that.
I have to now make sure I have food in my car, because it's going to be, rather than a 2-hour journey, I'm tacking on another 2. So it's like a 4-hour journey. So I need to multiple aspects of my day are now thrown out the window. So the inconvenience is huge, right?
Okay, huge inconvenience versus keeping a friendship.
Of course, I would like to keep the friendship, so I'll do it, but I'll be so irritated. Like, I ended up picking their family up from the airport, but the entire route, I was pissed off. I wasn't even being nice to the guest who I had to pick up from the airport. And then I felt like, you feel like shit, because, you are not even doing it from that mindset of being welcoming or being nice, or I was solely doing it because I wanted to keep that relationship. And I was also irritated that they even asked me to do this favor of them.
The insensitivity of not knowing what it entails for you. Okay, now imagine that the situation would have been different. I don't know how your friend asked you, via text or call. Was it a telephone call?
I think it was, yeah, it was a call, and it was like, hey, we like, there's no one else who can do it. Can you do it? They're coming. We have nobody else, blah, 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 right? Like,
Okay.
and since you're already coming, can you just pick them up, right?
Yeah.
And I did mention, oh, they're going to be like about 2 hours away. It's going to be more time. And they're like, yeah, I understand.
Let me interrupt you here. Let's imagine you reacted very differently at that moment when she kind of raised this favor. You would have been very much in tune with what you actually feel and how you see it. And you would right away would have said in a polite way that, I'm sorry, this is a terrible inconvenience for me. I will not be able to do that.
I think what happens in reality is like most of us will at that time not be able to, are not in touch with our feelings. Or
let's assume you would have.
If I
Then
would
what?
have, I think if I would have said, this is a terrible inconvenience for me, they would have said, well, can you do it this one time for me? And then I would have to again say yes.
No. In this example, you're a different person.
Yeah.
It was not just caving because of a way of discussion or something. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not able to do this.
It has to be a very different person, right? Like you just, like Adler says, you just have to choose to be comfortable with doing that. I don't think most.
Would you be comfortable with the consequences? This is my question.
Would I be comfortable with the consequences?
So she would have been irritated,
Yeah.
like she would have found you rude and impolite. She would have either told you or thought, well, now what? Because now it's, for me, it's a terrible inconvenience. I never asked you for anything. This is the first time. You could have helped me out and demonstrate your friendship. You didn't, blah, blah, blah. So it would have been in her court, and she would have decided, as we assume this example, to distance herself from you. This is the consequence, as we assume, right?
Yeah.
You would have known that because you would have been in touch with the situation at that moment, and you would have chosen your own avoidance of great discomfort versus the friendship. What else is different then? How do you, so you hang up, you know what happened, she knows what happened. How do you continue to deal with that?
I think I would be upset about, like, I know that would impact our friendship, so I'm going to be upset about it. And again, here, I didn't have the courage to be disliked, right? Like, I am now terribly inconvenienced with all of this, but I still don't have the, either which way I'm doomed, right? So the friendship is like.
Okay, it's a good example, I think. And based on this example, I would translate this rule of the courage to be disliked to the rule, the courage to be alone. Because ultimately, for me, to be disliked is just the beginning of people distancing themselves from me.
Right.
Because of the consequences of what I say or do, right? So they, after, maybe not immediately, but after a while, they leave me. And I'm becoming a polarizing figure, so people keep distance. I have no filters of speaking my mind and prioritizing myself, so people don't kind of form new friendships with me. This is the negative scenario. So who knows if this happens, but the possibility is there. If I implement the rule of standing up for myself rigorously, I have to take into account the possibility that basically no one will like that. Hence, I will be disliked. And if nobody likes that, maybe they will want to continue to work with me, but I will be disliked as a colleague, and I will not have friendships.
Absolutely. And I think I like that you said, the courage to be alone, right? So I do this to this one really nice friend. They start going away, and then, like, I do it to other people. And the end, like, I am left with just myself, right? Like,
yes. Can you deal with that?
And I don't think anyone can deal with that, can they?
That is not an answer to my question.
Maybe my
Can you
friend,
deal
the
with
one
that?
who left the pizza, right?
Right.
Like he
Can you deal
can.
with that? Or let me ask differently, under which circumstances could you deal with that?
I think you have to, the only circumstance in which you can deal with that is you have, you are one of those people who really don't care about anybody else. You're just, you're a selfish, self-centered person.
And self-sufficient.
And self-sufficient.
Kind of, I'm enough for me to be with myself.
But no one in the world is self-sufficient, right? Like you get cancer and even if you have all the doctors and all the money, you still need somebody with your mental health, someone else or something else, right? Like you cannot just be, how can you just be that self-sufficient?
Well, let's put it differently. Obviously, there are many people who are alone. There's even in the UK, there's something like a ministry for loneliness because it's become such a huge problem in modern society that people
Because
don't have
people are
enough
very
company.
selfish these days, and that is
That
how
is
they
the
end up being
reason, but
alone.
there's something, a matter of fact there, that in modern societies there's a high degree of loneliness. So this is a fact. The question is, can I be alone and happy or satisfied? This is what you seem to
Yeah.
refute.
I think in the short term I can be alone and self-satisfied, but in general over my life, if I keep doing this to everybody, right, where somebody asks me if it's even like if it's inconvenient for me and all, no one's gonna want to hang out with me, right? And then it just becomes a tougher life, right? Nobody like I say no to this friend, another friend asks for some other favor. Again, it's out of my way, like something I didn't want to do, or even at work, people in my company, I basically say, oh, this is my work, and I am not going to, help for this particular project that like the entire company needs to pull in together. I say, you know what, I'm comfortable. There's like professional consequences there.
Yes.
So I don't think, and even I may not like my team. Yes, I can switch my jobs, but none of them really just solve the problem, which is, I cannot operate. Nobody in this world can operate as an individual by themselves alone, right?
Let me rephrase the kind of the rule, the courage to be alone. Let me give you two variants of it, and let's see where that goes. The one variant would be that I tell you, because of your insecurities and your inability to judge in which situations you should stand up for yourself and in which not, and because of that you are freaking out by the sheer idea that you will be left, you are a bad advocate for yourself. I promise you, when you develop the courage to be disliked, that you will find true friends. So this would be one kind of variation of this rule. So not the courage to be disliked with the idea that you should be so self-sufficient that you wouldn't need anyone, but basically because you're freaking out with the idea that people will leave you, you're doing things that lead to maybe shallow friendships that are not fulfilling, or where you're dissatisfied for them other reasons. So what I preach, and I put myself into a possible Adler's shoes, what I preach is I tell you, you have to develop the courage to be disliked in order to form great friendships that are truly satisfying and where people truly like you, and not just for those half-assed kind of favors that you do. The other variation would be more strict, which is to say, no, I mean it literally. When you develop the courage to be disliked, you should be able to live with the possibility that literally everyone abandons you. And facing this if you can face this existential loneliness, your character will grow so much that you indeed will be completely self-sufficient, and you will not be neurotically dependent on someone else. Have I made clear those two variations?
Yes. So to reiterate, you said like sort of it becomes two different things. One is you have the courage enough to be alone and disliked enough to let go of those friendships that are fairly, this and that.
Yes.
And you say no to that. And once you become that fully rounded person, you then have, make friends who are at that similar bandwidth as you, right? So you just sort of are saying no. Yeah, it's basically sort of, saying, okay, I'm going to be uncomfortable in the present in the hopes that my future I will. Now, so that's one. And the other is, other thinking is I'm going to be alone and self-sufficient enough that it doesn't even matter to me that,
Yes,
that
and whether I then form friendships or not doesn't really matter.
I don't think there's like too much. Well, there is the first is like more hope, right? And then whenever there's hope, there's fear, right? That's what if I would for scenario number one, where I'm expecting that, okay, I will make other friends, immediately I'll be in the mood. Okay, I said no to this. Now I need to find other friends who'll be okay. I kind of would like to be in that number two scenario, even though I would like to say, you know what, I am enough, even if I end up being entirely alone. To me, that is like somehow that's feels more independent and feels more satisfying, even though
Yes,
but
it's
then
more
those people
independent.
become alone, right? Like
Obviously,
those
in the
people
second
like
category they would be alone, and there is there's beauty in the simplicity of it, right? It would be quite radical, but I would agree with what you said a couple of minutes ago, that I think this is unrealistic, because it goes counter of who we are as people, where the intimate relationships with others, the feeling to be understood, to feel close to friends or to a partner, are such an integral part of the fabric of who I think we are, in comparison to the few exceptions that do exist out there, where people are hermits somewhere in Canada, or India is a different matter. Even though you're a hermit, you're still part of communities, you still have exchange with people and so on. So it's not a full, I never see anyone kind of hermit life. But there are some people who seem to be really self-sufficient and kind of awkward in that. This is not a choice, I would say. I think this is preserved for very, very, very few cases who are kind of comfortable with this for whatever reason, be it a genetic predisposition, or there be an Asperger's syndrome, or in the spectrum, or something like this. For most other people, in my experience, it would not be okay, regardless of how self-sufficient they are, to be completely alone without friendship or partnership. So coming from that, my strong impression is that the first variation of the rule is what Adler actually meant, that it's a promise, that he says, trust me, when you are willing to get rid of most of the superficial contacts you have because of your social insecurities, you will be able and ready to find true friendships. And then this will compensate for, this will make you mature. You will be mature in yourself and more self-sufficient, and you will attract the right people who are truly interested in you. So I promise you, it will be a double win. I think that this is the more correct variation of what this kind of rule of courage to be disliked means. I don't know if the Japanese authors agree with that.
Yeah, I don't think they talked about like there's going to be promise, but they did talk about exactly that, which is only when you are comfortable being yourself do you have any growth in life. And again, like, like I said, there, like you also said, there is, you have to, you have to be able to overcome those insecurities. Now,
Yes.
how do you overcome these kind of insecurities in life, right?
Yes, extremely difficult question. It's good that we move on to that. It's
Yeah.
extremely difficult. I tell you first, I think what the normal variation of this is. Obviously, we live in a Western culture, or Western influenced culture, where it become kind of a Facebook or dating app uh, uh, commonplace.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude, not that it's exclusive, but many people have the attitude of take me as I am or fuck you.
And yes, I was about
I'm
to say
tired to
there's,
bend for your needs of you stupid men or your stupid
which
women.
is which is what coming from India, right? Like the reason why I always believe there's such a high divorce rate, or so
Mhm.
many of people I know and so many friends I know are single, is because they would be like, oh, this person did this, hence I'm not going to be
Yes.
like in relationship with them. It's, and those are minor infractions and they never really adjust. Yet on the other hand, or give in, yet on the other hand, when I had to do this for a friend, I was like so irritated. And it's that one is again a little bit more of a bigger example. I can even give a smaller example than that. I have a very good friend. He's literally 2 blocks away from me. He's single. And we end up like every time I hang out with
And you are
him,
not, just for
and
context.
I'm not, and I'm
Yes.
not. But both me and my partner are very good friends with him, and we every time we hang out with him, we really enjoy ourselves. Right? He's very amazing. You
Mm.
can have deeper conversations with him. We'll hang out, we'll enjoy with him whether we are going for sushi or just taking a walk. Yet on the other hand, I have this mental thing that I should hang out with him every week, and I'm a bad friend if I don't, or if he'll ask me, "Hey, can you just drop?" He has this thing where he wants people to pick him up or drop him from the airport, and it's $25 ride, right? It's not a big
Yes.
expensive ride, except that every time he asks me that, I love him, but I'm like, dude, it's going to waste at least an hour and a half of mine because I have to get ready, pick you up, drop you, come back.
Yeah.
So it's a 25 minute, $25 ride. Why are you trying to save those stupid $25? And I know he doesn't care about the $25
Yeah.
because he wastes money all the time. He has this mental thing. And I give in at times and I don't give in at times, but I always again feel that guilty. So you're saying I have to, even to him, who I absolutely enjoy hanging out with, I should just be like, no, sorry, I'm okay if you want to break my friendship over it. I know he will not break our friendship over it, but I do feel that guilt that, he asked me and he probably thinks of it as a way to, like, I understand I think to him, that is um, just a way of feeling loved by another
Yes.
person.
It's a gesture.
Um, it's a gesture that counts, not really, it's not the money obviously
Yes.
for him. Or and how do I say no to him when I know that is just a gesture that will really satisfy him, makes him feel loved? Yet on the other hand, I hate wasting an hour and a half of my time just picking and dropping. And even though the 25 minutes I'll go while dropping him, I'll actually enjoy it, right? Like our
Yes.
conversations would be very fun. There is still a little bit of benefit or fun for me, at least for half of that ride. um, but you're saying that even in these scenarios, you just end up saying, I'm okay to be alone, but I shouldn't, because it irritates me to do this gesture for you, I'm not going to do
Yeah,
it.
well, not so fast. Obviously, this is not my position, and I don't think that this is a correct Adlerian position as well. So in this context, let me rephrase again the credo of the courage to be disliked into something else, which would be the courage to express my needs with the potential risk that me and my needs are rejected, which is something else than is disliked. I still want to be liked. It's a friend. I don't want to lose them. I do care if they like me or not. But I put in an intermediary step between just disappearing in their need and rejecting their need completely, right? This would be the two extremes.
Yeah.
And I emerge in this dialectic, in this relationship or in this contact, I emerge and say, look, this is my position. Do you still insist on me picking you up? Or does it change something for you? For example, my position is, I love to spend time with you, not today. And I would like it to do it under other circumstances where I don't waste so much time. This is where I'm coming from. Do you still want me to pick you up?
It is tough. I think that is where the courage part happens, right? I don't have the courage to say that to him.
Yes.
And how do you build that? Like, how do you, in those scenarios, it is easier to it is so much easier to, like what you're saying to me, so much easier in theory than like the minute I imagine saying that to him, I don't think I would feel even that to him.
Well, I would put it differently and say, when you don't say this to him in whatever form, so if you choose to disappear and to subordinate yourself under his need, and his need to receive a gesture of friendship and connection, right? If you choose that, then I would say that you're not in connection with him. I'm exaggerating at all.
Yeah.
It's not you who picks him up. It's the projection of his need to feel connected that picks him up. And you're giving into that. So you choose, I would put it, who are you then when you do this? You're obviously not you.
Yeah.
Because you're harboring kind of this resentment against the style of gesture that you understand but don't really support, or you would like to have it differently. This is the more complete you, right? Where you are kind of conflicted about it, but you pretend to be not so much conflicted about it. Maybe you do some eye rolling, maybe you give a hint or something, but you don't really fully represent yourself with him, right? So here you are an absence more that you are a presence.
So I should have, I agree. So I should basically say to him, hey, I understand that, like, I would love, the way I've been dealing with it so far is I'll laugh. I'll basically tell him, hey, I can't do it this time, I'll do it next time. And like, sort of like half times back out, half times give in. But even when I'm giving in, it's only because I'm satisfying his need rather than like my own.
Yes, and even when you reject in this way, you're not fully yourself because you're making an excuse. You're not introducing your need.
Exactly.
Or a bigger picture, maybe, to go beyond just the needs. You don't invest so much in the gesture that would be important here for you, which is, let me explain myself to you, and then I would hope from a gesture from you, a gesture of understanding.
Okay. So having that courage to sort of say that.
It's the courage to be present in the contact with the people that you care about.
And the courage to express my needs.
Yes.
So how do you build that? Because
My
I
question is,
clearly
if you
don't.
don't do that, what is that? What are you and who are you if you don't do that? Not so much, I would not focus so much on how much
A
courage you would
coward.
have or how you do it and so on. What kind of life do you lead when we're explicitly not talking about job and
Mm-hmm.
this kind of outside life where fakeness is an integral part of how we operate. So we're talking about friendships, we're talking about connections that really matter to you
Yeah.
as a fuller person, right? Not just a segment of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So when we talk about that, if you don't even introduce yourself wholly in relationships that matter to you, then
Mm-hmm.
what are you? And to which small spaces do you confine the big picture of yourself? When do you appear as a person if not in those relationships that actually matter to you?
That is a sad thought, because that basically means I'm not even being myself with some of my closest, and like, I don't like to use the word best friends, but like some of the closest relationships in my life, I'm not even expressing
Exactly.
that. And that means that I'm only myself when I am by myself, or
Yes.
just maybe with my partner. But even with my partner, I'm not obviously 100%. So,
Yes. I mean, this is
which,
a caricature. So obviously there are
yeah,
some, when you have deep
yeah,
conversations and when you do connect, then obviously you show more
yeah,
of yourself. So it's a caricature, but in order,
mm-hmm,
for the sake of simplicity, let's
yeah,
assume that. Let's take the caricature that you're just fully
mm-hmm,
yourself when you're just alone, right?
exactly. So, then
Is
the
that a life that you want to lead?
well, that's the life that they ask you to lead in India, right? They say, just like
Is
they
that the
love.
life that you want to lead?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yet on the other hand, you don't like you, most of everyone's life, right? You are taught to do the give and take, to do the, you know, um,
Okay. Here, let me be Adlerian and say, I don't care. I don't care what people have promised you or asked you to do in the past. Right here, right now, I ask you, what kind of life do you want to lead? I don't care about your past.
I would not like to lead that kind of life. I would like to lead a life where I'm with this friend of mine, I'm 80% myself.
Yes.
I think if I'm 100% myself with more and more people, I think it'll lead to happier, better relationships.
Yes. Okay, and here, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming what I
Mm-hmm.
understand is the Adlerian position. I'm not fully talking as myself right now, but here I think you can see how this logic comes about of some of
Mm-hmm.
those Adlerian slogans, because now I would be in the place to say, me as an Adlerian, say, okay, hence, so I don't care about your past. We discussed
Mm-hmm.
the topic. It's clear to you, it's clear to me that you want to be a fuller person with the close
Yeah.
people around you. And now, as a consequence, I'm saying, since this is so clear, don't ask me how, just do it.
That's what Adler says. And
Exactly.
that to me is
If this is so
impossible.
clear, as we have kind of peeled the layers of this in the previous
Mm-hmm.
conversation, if this is so clear, it's irrelevant of how to do it. You have to do it. This is the kind of
Yeah.
Adlerian dictum of you
That's
can
what
decide
exactly. He's
to be
like, you
happy.
just have to do it because there's
Yes.
no other option.
Everything else will be chickening out, would be finding excuses, would be basically retreating again into a
Mm-hmm.
position where you want to tell me that it's easier not to be yourself than be yourself. And this has not become acceptable anymore because of the conversation that we had. Because you said, I don't want to have this kind of life. I want to be more myself with the people around me. So, which brings me as an Adlerian kind of psychologist into the position to say, okay, if this is so, that I don't accept it, then I don't accept any excuses anymore. There's no excuses left,
Yeah.
except you want to bring in the past because I was raised in an Indian way, because I was told in such a
Those
way to live my
excuses.
life. But we agreed it doesn't matter. We can
Yeah.
endlessly discuss about, if you want to prioritize the past, we can endlessly go around and say, yes, poor you, I still like you, and the therapeutic relationship, slowly building your confidence and so on. It's all a waste of time. Once the problem is clear, once it's clear to me what I want, and that contrasting information from the past are not relevant to me anymore, the only position that I'm left with is, okay, then I have to do the right thing. Do it. I don't care.
Yet most people aren't able to do it.
I'm talking to you now.
So yeah, I think I finally understand what he means that by the courage to be disliked and sort of the benefits that you'll get out of it, right?
Yes.
Which is you learn to express your needs better. You say, I would much rather be 100% myself and be alone and or have, with the hope that I will have deeper relationships. But
As yourself, right?
as myself,
Yes.
but I would rather than just, rather than not being disliked, right? Now that is like, I finally understand the concept. So that's helpful, but I don't know, or like, what tips would you give to that? Like, okay, I understand the concept. I totally understand the need to do it. Adler says just do it, which is impossible for me. What would you say? How would you tell someone like me in this scenario with my friend who's very close to me, who I really like, right? Like, how do you build that courage to actually express your needs?
Yes. And here we go back to an older point, and I would not like that. For me, the question of courage is already done.
Yeah.
So at this point of the conversation, you either ignore what we talked about in the last 20 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Or courage is not a question anymore because there's no other option. And where there's no other option, I don't really need courage kind of to breathe.
Okay.
I don't need courage to go to the supermarket to get food. It's just, I have to do it. Nobody cares if I have courage for this or not. I basically just have to do it. Now, we have to wrap it up, but I see some validity even in the Adlerian framework when you say, okay, I'm still interested in different options on how to do things and so on. For me, the huge difference is, as who are you speaking? If you are speaking as the one who has fully accepted that regardless of what happens, you will somehow implement this new position of your fuller self in this relationship with your friend, then it's an exchange of ideas and you're just settling in with the concept, and it's just a friendly reflection with someone who has basically already decided. Versus, so this would be the correct kind of way of to go about it, versus someone who says, well, I'm still having doubts. I'm still not sure that I can pull it off. I can only pull it off if you give me really good tools.
Yeah.
Which
and I
would
think
be
most people will fall in that second category.
Yes,
right?
But then they have not fully understood the position that they're in. And I mean, I agree with you, but now I'm talking more specifically to you. You have to know from which position you come from. If you retreat to a point of insecurity, I'm not sure if I should do this after all, then we have to go 2-3 steps back and kind of look again at the inevitability of this position by basically working out what else is your alternative. Your alternative is to be kind of a divided person, to not to have full relationships and so on. So it would be back to this square, right? Or again, the other option is that I fully internalize it. If in our conversation I don't get great tools, I will do it nonetheless. Like, it's not a question anymore. I will just be clumsy about it and so on. But yeah, I get it. I will still talk to my friend. So the purpose of the continuing conversation is just to get fluidity, elegance, or, kind of some embellishment around this, which would be more in the Adlerian framework. But since this is clear, so it's basically back, or it becomes kind of an informative chat, maybe at this point we can end the conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's a good exit point. For me, it was very interesting because I achieved my goal. I wanted to go deep kind of into one question. And my
Yeah.
impression is that you got some more clarity about that, which I hoped.
Yeah, I think so. I think this was really good. So we ended up going just deeper into that fun topic. So
Yes.
absolutely.
Thanks again to Palvi for this second conversation about Adlerian psychology. And there will be a third part, probably in about 2 weeks, where we will try to sum up our conversation and find some conclusion about Adlerian psychology and philosophy. Please find in the descriptions the details to the books which have been the basis for our discussions, and I hope that you tune in next time.